keep thinking about how strange love can be in a place like Port Charles, the kind of town where happiness sometimes feels temporary even before it begins. And that is why the story of Cody Bell and Molly Lansing Davis actually hits harder than people might expect. Because this is not just romance. It is stubborn love. The kind that walks straight into heartbreak knowing full well it might not survive. So imagine this moment. Cody standing somewhere quiet, maybe the docks, maybe a park bench. Honestly, the location almost doesn't matter because what matters is the look on Molly's face. She already believes life closed, one of the biggest doors for her. Doctors told her about endometriosis. That word alone can shatter a future someone imagined since childhood. A family, a child, something that carries your blood forward. Molly heard that diagnosis and part of her future collapsed like a building with its supports ripped away. And here is the thing about Molly. She is rational, logical, almost painfully practical sometimes. She does not romanticize problems. When she heard that she might never carry a child, she did not pretend everything would magically be fine. Instead, she started thinking about consequences. Relationships change under that kind of pressure. Marriages break under smaller burdens. So Molly slowly started pulling away emotionally from Cody. Not dramatically, not with shouting, more like distance creeping in quietly, fewer long conversations. More hesitation when the topic of the future came up. It was subtle, but Cody noticed. He is not the smartest man in every room, but he is not blind either. And Cody reacted in a way that surprised even himself. Instead of stepping back, he stepped forward. There's something almost reckless about that decision. People usually run from complications like infertility. They do not rush toward them with a ring in their pocket. But Cody is not exactly a man who makes life decisions with perfect strategy. His heart gets involved first. His brain arrives later, sometimes much later. So one night, he finally decides enough is enough. Molly is trying to slowly convince him to leave without saying the words directly, and he refuses to let that happen. The proposal itself is not some polished romantic movie scene. In fact, it is probably awkward. Cody stumbling over words. Maybe he starts talking about something completely unrelated. The weather, the docks, something dumb like that. Molly thinking he is just rambling again. Then suddenly, the tone shifts. He tells her he knows about the diagnosis. Of course he knows. Everyone close to Molly eventually finds out, and she immediately braces herself for what usually follows. Sympathy, silence, distance, the slow emotional withdrawal. Instead, Cody says something that hits Molly completely sideways. He tells her he did not fall in love with her uterus. He fell in love with her brain, her stubbornness, her ridiculous habit of turning every moral debate into a courtroom argument. The way she refuses to compromise when she believes she is right, which happens often. And then he says something that honestly sounds messy and imperfect and very human. Life does not come with guarantees anyway. Even couples who can have children sometimes never do. Some marriages end in 5 years, some dreams disappear. So why are they acting like her diagnosis is the only risk in the world? Molly just stands there processing all of this. Because she expected pity. She did not expect defiance. Then Cody kneels down, not gracefully either. Maybe he almost loses balance. Maybe he mutters something about his knee hitting the ground too hard. And he asks her to marry him. The moment hangs there awkwardly. Molly is crying but also half laughing because the entire situation feels unreal. And eventually she says yes. Not because everything suddenly became easy, but because for the first time since the diagnosis she realizes someone is choosing her anyway. The wedding happens sooner than people expect. That part actually causes some gossip around Port Charles. A few people wonder if Cody is rushing into something he does not fully understand. Marriage is not just about love. It is about long-term expectations, about children, about the future. But Cody ignores all of that. The ceremony itself is not extravagant, probably small. Friends, family, a quiet location. What matters is the look Molly gives Cody during the vows. That look carries relief and fear at the same time, because she still believes she might eventually disappoint him. And Cody senses that fear even if she never says it out loud. So during the vows, he makes something clear in his own clumsy way. A family can happen in many different shapes. Adoption, foster care, or maybe just two people building a life together without children. What matters is that they choose each other. At least that is what they believe in that moment. Then something happens that honestly feels like the universe playing a strange game. Months pass. Life settles into routine. Molly focuses on work again. Cody continues trying to prove he can actually be responsible, which is a work in progress. and Molly begins noticing changes in her body. At first she ignores them. Stress can do weird things. Hormones shift. She does not want to jump to impossible conclusions. But eventually curiosity wins. She takes a test, and suddenly the impossible is staring back at her in the form of 2 lines. Molly sits there for a long time holding that test, almost afraid to breathe too hard in case the moment disappears. Because, according to everything she was told, this should not happen. Yet here it is. When she finally tells Cody, the reaction is explosive in the best way. The man looks like someone just handed him the entire world. He laughs. He cries. He keeps repeating the same question over and over. Are you serious? For Molly, the emotion is more complicated. Happiness mixed with fear. Because pregnancies with endometriosis can be fragile, risky. They decide to keep the news private for a while, just until they know the pregnancy is stable. That decision ironically becomes one of the reasons tragedy eventually strikes. Because one person who would normally know about something like this does not know. Kristina Corinthos Davis. Kristina and Molly have always had a complicated sister dynamic. Love mixed with rivalry, support mixed with frustration. Anyone who has siblings probably understands that strange emotional cocktail. Recently, their relationship has been strained again, small disagreements turning into larger arguments, nothing catastrophic, just tension simmering beneath everyday conversations. Kristina begins feeling like Molly is hiding something. She cannot prove it, but the distance is noticeable. Molly is quieter, distracted, careful about physical activity, protective in ways Kristina does not understand. And because Kristina does not know about the pregnancy, she interprets everything wrong. She assumes Molly is judging her, avoiding her, acting superior again. One evening, the tension finally explodes. Maybe it happens in Molly's apartment, maybe somewhere else private, but the conversation quickly spirals. Words thrown carelessly, old resentments resurfacing. Kristina accusing Molly of acting like she is better than everyone. Molly snapping back that Kristina never thinks before acting. Voices rise. Emotions boil. Molly eventually tries to end the argument by walking away. And this is where everything goes wrong. Kristina grabs her arm. Not violently. Just trying to stop her from leaving mid-argument. Molly pulls back. Kristina pushes instinctively. The movement lasts 1 second. Molly loses balance. She falls. At first, Kristina does not even understand what just happened. It looks like a simple accident. Then she sees Molly curled slightly, hands around her stomach, face twisted in pain. The realization hits slowly. Hospital lights, doctors rushing around, Cody arriving like a storm, and eventually the words no one wants to hear. The pregnancy is gone. What makes the situation especially brutal is timing. Molly and Cody barely had time to fully process the miracle before it vanished. For Cody, the grief quickly mutates into anger. Not quiet anger either. The kind that searches desperately for someone to blame. When he learns Kristina was involved, the reaction is immediate. In his mind, there is no gray area. She pushed Molly. Molly fell. The baby died. Kristina tries explaining it was an accident. She did not know about the pregnancy. She never meant to hurt her sister. But grief does not care about explanations. Molly herself enters a strange emotional state. Shock first, then emptiness, then anger slowly creeping in. The worst part for her is knowing how unlikely the pregnancy was in the first place. It felt like a once-in-a-lifetime miracle. Now that miracle is gone. And the person responsible is someone she spent her entire childhood with. Their relationship fractures instantly. Kristina wants forgiveness, or at least understanding. But Molly cannot even look at her without remembering the fall. Cody becomes even more hostile. From his perspective, Kristina destroyed something sacred. Legal consequences suddenly enter the conversation. Could Kristina face charges for assault leading to miscarriage? The idea begins circulating among family members. Some people argue it was an accident. Others say anger still has consequences. Kristina finds herself increasingly isolated. Meanwhile, Cody pushes Molly towards seeking justice. Not just emotional closure, but real consequences. Courtrooms. Police reports. The entire process. And honestly, this is where the moral complexity of the story becomes fascinating. Because from one angle, Kristina is clearly responsible for a reckless action. From another angle, she did not know Molly was pregnant. She never intended to harm a child. Yet intention does not erase the result. In my personal opinion, this kind of storyline works best when nobody walks away clean. Not emotionally, not morally. Grief changes people. It pushes them toward decisions they might regret later. Cody might become so obsessed with punishment that he damages Molly further. Molly might realize vengeance does not heal the loss. Kristina might carry guilt that reshapes her entire identity. And poor Charles, as always, watches another family collapse under pressure. The most heartbreaking possibility, though, is what happens between Molly and Cody afterward. Sometimes couples grow closer after tragedy. Sometimes the loss becomes a quiet shadow living in their house forever. They might try again someday. Another pregnancy. Another chance. Or they might decide that love itself has to be enough. Either way, one thing becomes painfully clear. The miracle was real, and so was the loss.